The Shadow of the Crown, an introduction to the alternate history where the oppression of colonialism on the Congo is reversed on the once colonizers. This book tells the story of a Congolese man named Mbenga, which takes place in the 1920s. It follows the journey from a servant in Belgian noble's home to a figure of influence. The story explores themes of memory, ambition, and the fight for justice against a backdrop of colonial history and political change. Chapter 1: The Weight of Memory. The grand hall of Baron Henri Dubois' residence was a study in stillness. Dust motes danced in the pale afternoon sun, caught in the slivers of light that pierced the heavy velvet curtains. Silence, thick and opulent, clung to the air like a fine perfume. It was the silence that Mbenga had trained to respect, a silence of unblemished wood, polished silver, and hushed footsteps. But with him there was no quiet. His mind was a maelstrom of memories, a deafening roar that clashed violently with the tranquil opulence surrounding him. He stood sentinel still by the massive mahogany table, a ghost in the palace built on bones. The cool, carved wood beneath his fingertips felt alien and wrong. It was a world away from the blood-soaked earth of his homeland, the Congo, a land that had not yet shed the phantom screams of those lost under the cruel regime of King Leopold II. He was a piece of art in the grand prison, a foreign fixture, his ebony skin a startling contrast to the pale faces in the family portraits that lined the walls. Yet he was more than a fixture, he was a living and breathing testament to the very crimes that afforded his family its wealth. Every object in this house told a story he knew too well. The gleaming chandelier above him, dripping with crystals like frozen tears, a symbol of ivory plundered from his land. The deep red color of the drapes echoed the stains of the soil of his village. The portraits of the Baron's ancestors, with their imperious, satisfied expressions, looked at him, their silent gaze a continuation of the impression. Mbenga felt their judgment, a legacy of power built on suffering. He was not polished wood, but the dense, dark forest of his home. He heard not the ticking of the grandfather clock, but the whispered protests of the ghosts of his ancestors. The most potent memory, however, was a vision of his family and friends, their hands and feet severed, a brutal tax paid for failing to meet the impossible rubber quotas. This image, a grotesque and painful wound, was a constant searing presence in his mind. It was a debt he could never repay, a horror he could never unsee. He was a man of two realities: the gilded servitude of his present and brutal, raw wound of his past. He served a man whose every possession, from the wine in his glass to the clothes on his back, was a product of the wealth stolen from his homeland. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle memory of rage he kept carefully suppressed. He spoke the words of his resolve to himself, a silent vow that no one in his house would ever hear. Here I stand, a decorated possession in this grand prison, yet my father's screams still whisper to me from the polished wood. They built their palaces on bones, and now I pour their wine. How bitter this life is. This house, this man, this nation, they're all built on a debt of blood, and I, who remember the price, am here to make them pay. In the pockets of his finely tailored uniform, a short, well-worn letter from his cousin in the Congo lay folded. The words were simple and coded, speaking of the ongoing struggle, of forced labor, and of the unrelenting sun that bakes the land, but cannot break the spirit of our people. We remember. We wait for a sign. He almost felt the heat of the Congo's sun on his skin, the dust in his throat. He had the sign. He was the sign.